Hey, thanks for having me, Eric. Been looking forward to it.
So I wanted to start out and understand what is the Wi-Fi tribe?
Good start. Okay. Well, it's a cult for starters. So let's just get that out of the way. So I'm part of a company called Wi-Fi Tribe, and what it is, it's a community of people that are all remote workers in some sense. Like a lot of them are developers, lends itself well to that. Some people are marketers, such as myself. Some people, we even have a brain surgeon who works remote. We have a lawyer that works remote as well. It's just people that are location independent and don't have to go into a 9 to 5 typical building. They can work remote. They can work online, and that's me basically. So the way it works is that this company will set up what they call chapters. So every month there are different locations around the world that you can sign up for. So for example, well, this is pre-pandemic, obviously, but for example, we've got August coming up, and you'd be able to select from Lisbon or Rio or Bolivia or somewhere in Mexico, right? And what you get is you get a month-long experience with other similarly minded people, remote workers. And they basically just give you got accommodations, nice housing, and guaranteed good internet. And you have a normal work week. You go and work with those people. You get inspired because they're from different backgrounds and they're all just like, naturally curious about this kind of stuff. And on weekends, you explore the new place that you're in. So, for example, last year it was Colombia. I did Bolivia, Costa Rica, Mexico, and a little bit of Paraguay. So on the weekends, you get to go out and meet the locals and see all the local stuff. So it's kind of a fun way to work and travel.
That's so interesting because you're now the second guest that I've had on that has been part of a similar organization that basically sets up this digital nomad experience, but kind of takes some of the work out of it and being able to provide you a place and the connectivity and whatnot. It sounds really awesome because being a digital nomad, I think, is going to be increasingly popular, especially now that we've gone through COVID and more people have started to experience remote work. How has that been for you at Brafton? Has the company really adopted remote work for its workers?
Well, for the most part, we can do everything that we need to do remote. We probably always have been, but there's this shifting mindset, especially, well, across the world now, especially, but with Brafton over the past 5 years or so, seeing that everything that we need to do, we can get done online. We're a content marketing agency. We do digital marketing, content marketing. So there's very few things that require you to be on location. Visiting clients, you can do that over Zoom now. Writing content, you're always able to do that over the web. Doing podcasts, you can do that over the web. And I think a lot of companies are looking at it like, yes, it is nice to have a physical location where maybe you get like a shared workspace or something. But is it really necessary to spend all that money? I mean, look at downtown San Francisco rent. That's the closest major city I live next to. You could be paying $100,000 a month upwards. For what? Like you get, sure, you get some of that in-person camaraderie and all that stuff. But you could get that out of a shared workspace for 1/5 the cost and get your job done just as well, if not better, working from home because you're not distracted, not screwing around a lot. So I think we're very similar to most companies that are realizing, hey, we can actually manage remote pretty damn well.
I think one of the uh, drawbacks that some companies have felt about having a remote workforce is, well, how can I watch them? How can I monitor? How can I make sure that they're being productive?
Yeah.
In your own work, how have you adapted to moving around, being in different places, and finding that time during the day to be productive?
Well, for me, it's like specifically when I'm on a chapter on Wi-Fi Tribe, I'm surrounded by professionals. They're all there's marketers. They're working a lot. These people work a lot. This is a group of strong work ethic people, and that just creates that environment where when you're around these people, you want to work more. You want to impress, and you're inspired because other people are doing other things. So from a remote work standpoint, it's not a problem for me. Usually the problem that we experience as digital nomads is not knowing when to turn it off because it's just so accessible. Go to an office, you get that physical distance between you and home, you're in work mode. And the same thing when you come home, you shut it off. You get on the train and you shut it off mentally. When you got your computer sitting in the other room, it's just too easy to access. So I'd say the main problem is knowing when and how to set those types of boundaries. And it's something that the whole, like, the digital nomad community, we talk to a lot of these people, and they have the same types of issues. They have to set some sort of boundary so that they don't just work themselves into a stupor.
I'm a big believer in work-life balance, and I think one of the things I appreciate about somebody who's got a digital nomad life is you get a chance to get out, experience different cultures,
Uh-huh.
different attitudes towards business and work life. Have you found that you've really been able to take things back into, sort of your own personal work ethic based on your travels and the things that you've seen and experienced in other cultures?
It's been the most meaningful thing that I've ever done is sign up for this and travel and work for a number of different. From a business perspective, absolutely, just the inspiration that you get from other people, teaching other people SEO. I'm with other people, and we'll do a skill share. If you're adept in a particular area, you can share that with other people and give them like a training course, like a introductory training course. And it makes you think of new ways. I think you understand your skill set much better when you're forced to teach it. So I've taught this so many times that I've gotten better at teaching it. It's making my writing better. So from that standpoint, it's been helpful. It's also helpful in talking with people in different with different skill sets. They do the same thing, and you're inspired in your job, thinking, "Oh my God, there's so much more potential in web design." I'm working with a web designer, hanging out with a web designer every day, and they've got these new insights, and you're like, "Okay, I can use this in my company immediately." So yeah. So from a professional standpoint, it's been very, very good. But also from a personal standpoint, I don't think there's many things more valuable than embracing other cultures and learning about other cultures. It makes the world a little bit smaller and less scary the more you experience other people in different and like very, very different cultures. A good example is I was in Bolivia, and you wouldn't think this, but you go to Bolivia and you walk down the street and everyone's wearing old bowler caps. Mostly the women wearing old bowler caps. So what is that? What is that all about? It's like so unusual. And come to find out, Europe accidentally sent a huge shipment of bowler caps. They sent it to the wrong place and it landed somewhere in Bolivia, and they all loved them. And so it turned into a fashion for over 100 years, almost 200 years now. People started wearing bowler caps because of a ship accidentally landed near Bolivia and brought them up there.
Oh, that's
Um,
funny.
and you would never, these are things that you just wouldn't learn, having, if you're not traveling and experiencing these cultures and really, getting, getting a feel and empathy for different people, different cultures. So it's been incredible for me. Like I wish I would have done it sooner.
It's crazy. I think the statistic here in the States is only like something around 10% of the population has a passport. It's
Is that it?
it's a very
Wow.
small number. It's a very small
Yeah.
number. Yeah.
I'll be damned. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's fascinating.
There's so much
Yeah.
to see out there. So I know your day job is Brafton. You're the chief marketing officer there. Talk a little bit about how you got there and what your role is at Brafton.
Yeah. So like you said, I'm the chief marketing officer at Brafton. I started back there a long time, so almost about 8 years ago. I started as like a content strategist would be the equivalent of what it is today. So working with clients, looking at their website and determining what types of content to create from an SEO standpoint, from a reader standpoint. It was typical account management work. You're doing some strategy. You're trying to keep your clients happy. That whole thing.
Mhm.
And I immediately took an interest in SEO. Like that was kind of like a side part of the job, learning how to do web analytics and SEO. But for me, that just clicked. You get one of these things in your life every now and then. Somebody gets some sort of skill that just makes sense. Like you see it like artwork, and that always happened with me with SEO. It just kind of made sense. So I just kept pushing along that vein and started learning more and more and more about it. And Brafton was great because they carved out specific roles for me where I could do SEO related stuff. And eventually I moved out of the client work. I haven't talked to a client in quite a long time. And I started working internally for the brand and specifically doing a lot of the SEO work type of stuff. And then over the past 3 years, I've kind of stuck with SEO because that's my baby, that's my passion. I love it, but it's moved into more of like a broad, like general marketing type of role, a typical marketing type of role as you would think of it. Email campaigns, SEO content, all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty much the evolution. But the through line really here has always been SEO. It's always been web analytics because that's been my real fascination since the beginning.
Well, I've been looking forward to this conversation because I've really wanted to drill into some SEO ideas and talk a little bit about strategies that you found are working. So one of the questions that I have is, SEO is evolving. Google changes their algorithms, but it is the holy grail of marketing, right? It's content that gets exposed and people find it without you necessarily having to pay for any advertising to get people there. But
Yeah.
there are all these rules on what works and what doesn't work. For example, I see out there that they say if you're going to do a blog post, you want it to rank, it should be somewhere in the 1,700 word range. But then you go and you look for certain keywords and you see what the top ranking pages are, and they're these short little articles. They're a couple hundred words at best.
Yeah.
Is there really a rule
For
content length?
content? No, there's not. As a matter of fact, should we go on a tirade? Shall
Sure,
we?
let's do it.
Should we do this? I would say the majority of things that you hear about SEO are wrong for the most part and overcomplicated. So if we think about SEO, what's the first thing that comes to mind when I say SEO? Like what concept comes to mind?
Keyword rankings, organic content.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of it is, I think that's probably a better starting point. But when you say SEO to a lot of people kind of freeze up. A lot of small business owners, one person organizations, you say SEO to them, if they don't have a background in it, immediately it's an overwhelmed whitewashing on their face. They're just kind of terrified of it. It's almost like, bringing your car to the mechanic. You have no idea what is wrong with your car, and you're trusting the mechanic's going to tell you something that's truthful. Same thing with SEO. I talk to a lot of small business owners, and they don't know the first thing about it, and they just get overwhelmed when they assume it's going to be way overcomplicated over their head, and they're going to need some sort of specialist to help them do it. Very technical. They always think it's very, very technical. Truth of the matter is that we SEOs, this whole SEO community, has overcomplicated SEO to a point where it's almost like a black box to most people, specifically small business owners, which is definitely untrue, and it also doesn't help it. So the way I look at it is SEO. This is something that can absolutely be done by anybody, by any small business owner, anybody that's trying to get their business off the ground can absolutely do it. The problem is just overlooking the overcomplication that's been put out there by my people in this market. So let me explain here. So mostly what people hire SEOs to do, like if you got a small business owner, it happens all the time. They're going to try to find some SEO vendor, right? And what you're going to get is an SEO vendor that does a lot of technical SEO things, right? They're going to throw technical SEO. It's a whole subsect of search engine optimization, and that's about 95% of what's taught. Go out there and search SEO. They're going to tell you how to do title tags, metadata, all kinds of things that usually frees people up, and they think, I can't do this kind of thing. Right? So that's about 95% of it out there, and that's about 95% of what you're going to pay for. Problem is, these are a set of rules. Like most of what you see out there, you read about, and most of what you get, these are a set of rules that basically is actually SEO, and it will keep your website running, but it really does nothing for your performance. So if you're a small business owner and you want to get more traffic, because you want to make more sales, doing technical SEO and working with these SEO agencies 95% of the time will probably do nothing, because technical SEO is basically just keeping the tires on your car. If I can use an analogy, right? Like pretend that your website is a car and the SEO are the tires. All right. Replacing the tires will never make your car faster, but a popped tire will slow it down. Right.
So if I could get you to pause right there for a second.
Yeah.
So when you go and like Google has a website analysis tool, right, that gives you a score 0 to 100, red, yellow, green, how your website is performing. Is that sort of where technical SEO is going to show up?
Generally, that's 99% of the time when you use one of these tools and it tells you, is your site SEO optimized? That's what it's doing. It's going through these technical components and it's going through a diagnostic checklist. Are you doing this, 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 and this, and this? If the answer is yes, then everybody feels good because your website is SEO optimized from a technical standpoint. Yeah, that's what you're going to find out there. That's exactly right.
Okay.
But problem is that's not going to do anything for you. Basically, if you break one of these rules, it's going to just prevent your site from doing what it ought to do. Right? So if all of these things are not broken, then okay, you're at baseline, your car's cruising, you have no flat tires. It's not going to make your website any better. It's not going to drive you any more traffic. What's going to do that is good keyword research and then writing really, really good content the right way. That is what drives traffic. And fortunately, this is a lot more accessible to people that don't do SEO, like the classical SEO that I was talking about, like technical SEO, metadata, all that kind of stuff, right? So in theory, you could set up a website where you just follow this very basic set of rules that you just use the analogy of like going to Google and saying, is my website SEO optimized? That's just a set of rules, like making sure Google can find your pages, making sure you haven't broken anything, and then go into the real part that actually drives traffic to your site, which is really good keyword research and then really good content writing. When you do those two, that's 95% of the results is keyword research and really, really good content writing. The other part, the thing that everybody worries about, is just a set of checklist items to make sure that people can find the content and the keywords that you researched. Right? So it's almost like a mismatch of priorities here. Really. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make perfect sense. So you want to have the technical SEO stuff right, but you don't want to overly focus on that because that's ultimately not going to get you found. It just could maybe be a hindrance if you've got the other content where it needs to be.
Yeah, if you focus on the technical SEO and you've already checked off the minimum checklist, for the most part, you're going to be fine. And what was I going to say about that? Yeah, as far as the technical SEO stuff is concerned, it's mainly like a diagnostic checklist. And usually what happens is you create a problem on the site, right? So if you a good example, you take a very bare bones website with nothing on it. You've got 4 pages, right? And you've got maybe a tiny little bit of content. That is a perfect SEO optimized page. You haven't created any problems yet, right? So most of what you see with SEO, like I was talking about, this technical SEO, is just fixing problems, really, because you start perfect and then you just layer problems on. So if you've got this set of rules that you know as you're building out your website, you will never need any of those technical SEO services. All you ever need really is to know how to write content and how to do some decent keyword research so that you can drive traffic to your site. It's a lot more. I feel like maybe I'm not explaining it very well, but it's a lot more simple than people think it is.
Well, a lot of things that I see commented on a lot are on the technical SEO side. I think this is where this falls in, is the speed of your website, how fast it loads, and its mobile friendliness, whether it works on mobile. Do you put those things in that technical SEO bucket?
I would, yeah. There's a few things in there that should be paid attention to. Like it is there. You could, not knowing anything about SEO, go through this diagnostic checklist, and that's one. Mobile speed, mobile friendliness. Yeah, definitely. Those are important things. Can your content be indexed? That's an important thing. Do you have a ton of like redirecting pages? Like you accidentally moved your page and then you moved it again. You've got Google hopping back and forth. They're all things that you just go through a checklist without knowing anything about SEO and see, oh, okay, accidentally see this thing. I should probably fix that. And then once you've checked that off the box, you're good. Like your site's clean, and then you just focus on writing good content.
Talk a little bit about this idea of domain score. What is it and how do you get it?
So generally this is referred to as domain authority, and that's what this is a metric used by Moz. Moz is like one of the most reputable SEO companies out there. They make tools and they write articles. People contribute articles to it, advanced SEO types of stuff. They have a metric called domain authority. And what this is meant to do is it's meant to be a relative score for your website. It basically tells you how authoritative is your website versus another website in the eyes of Google. Right? So you could have one website that's a 45 domain authority, another one that's a 65. Right? So that should tell you that the 45 website is relatively less authoritative than the 65 website. So what this should tell you is, like, if you just want to do you want to audit, you want to see where you stand against your competitors, that would tell you you are behind your competitor in terms of authority. And the leap that you can make from there is that if you were trying to rank for the same keyword against that website, you would struggle. You'd be punching a little bit above your weight class because they're a more reputable website in the eyes of Google, and you're going to struggle to do that, right? So there's really no, an important thing to note is there's no good or bad domain authority. People always ask me that. What's a good one? What's a bad one? It's a relative scale. There's only good compared to your competitors that you're going up against. There's only bad going up compared to the competitors that you're going up against, right? So if all your competitors are an 80 and you're in 60, then you've got a bad domain authority. But if you're a 60 and all your competitors are a 30, then you've got a good domain authority.
So for many smaller businesses, their domain authority might be 0, right? They might not have any domain authority yet. So how do you build it? What are the factors that go into moving that number up?
So there's a number of, there's 40 different factors, over 40 different factors get built into the equation. The majority of it is links. So a link is any website that sends a hyperlink back to your website, which is, in essence, it's a vote of confidence. It's a vote that says this website is reputable, according to me. So the number of those links that point back to your website and the quality of those links are huge determinants to Google. That says, all right, basically all of these websites have voted their confidence in this website. Right? So that sends a signal to Google that, okay, maybe these guys are authorities in their space. And especially if you're getting quality links, like if you got a website and you're getting links from Forbes and Wall Street Journal, those carry so much more weight than, some tiny little blog with a tiny domain authority linking to you 1,000 times. That may carry the same weight. One link from a Forbes might be the same as 1,000 mediocre links. So that's the major factor. And really, the name of the game is not to increase your domain authority. And domain authority is just a metric to let you know where you are, right? Increasing your domain authority does not mean you're going to increase your keyword rankings or your traffic or anything like that. That just gives you a sense of, domain authority gives you a sense of where you stand and your potential to rank, right? So it's not a goal. It's not an end goal in of itself. It's just more of a measurement of how you're doing.
So again, keeping in mind sort of small or mid-sized businesses, maybe businesses that haven't built up that kind of domain authority. One of the things that I have seen with various SEO agencies is that they come in and they say, okay, we're going to get you to rank for a bunch of keywords. And so they go out and they build some content that eventually gets ranked, but it's a bunch of keywords or long tail phrases that have nothing really to do with the business. Their search volume is very, very low. But the agency can come back and say, oh, look, you're number one for this, 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 and this. We've got you number one in, 50 different keywords. Is that is that sort of a game, or is that a real strategy to start building up that authority, or to start, building up those backlinks and whatnot?
Probably both.
Both?
Yeah, probably both. It really, SEO is still kind of the wild, wild west. Really, there's no oversight, there's no regulations, there's no real standard for what qualifies as good SEO. Like we talked before about this, the technical SEO side of things, where you find 95% of the work goes into. You could have an SEO agency that you hire, and they go through this diagnostic checklist and they check off every one of those boxes, and technically they did SEO, and your website will probably not gain any other additional traffic. So technically that is SEO, and they did their job. Same thing with this instance that you just talked about, where they get your website to rank for some keywords. Might not be helpful keywords, but they did their job. They got you to rank for keywords. Might not help you at all. This is very, very prevalent. It's an unregulated industry where you're just kind of, again, it's worse than bringing your car into the mechanic. At least the mechanic's expected to get your car running again. This may not get your car running again. So to your point, this does happen. And the reason why is because it's still, SEO has been around 15, 20 years, but it's still, in the grand scheme of things, it's an emerging industry. People don't know how to quantify it. They don't know how to measure quality yet, because most of the people that are hiring SEOs are just taking their word for it.
So when you rank for a bunch of unrelated keywords, or keywords that have really no search volume, you're really not doing anything to help you on those keywords that do matter?
Not really. No. It looks good. I mean, I could show you the number of ways that you could. It's very, very easy to manipulate data, and Google Analytics is where you probably do a lot of your reporting to show the gains that you've made. You can adjust time frames a little bit. You can turn that red number into a green number. You can get keywords that are not important to rank, and you can have that show up on your SEMrush, your SEO tool, that shows that you made some gains, but you didn't make any financial gains for the customer. And really, that's what it comes down to. When you're doing SEO, your number one focus should always be, is this action tied to revenue in some way, shape, or form? So really, what a good SEO should do, and there's a lot of good SEOs out there, and I've been a little bit rough in this conversation. There's a lot of good SEOs out there. What they're going to try to do is focus on two main areas. One is the commercial side of your website. So you got a website that sells widgets, right? You've got a home page, and then you've got maybe 5 different widget pages, right? So they should do SEO work to find keywords that people are searching where their intent is to buy this particular widget, right? Let's use Brafton's website as an example. People are looking for content, right? I want to find a keyword that people are going to use to find services where they're going to buy those services. Typically, people that search content marketing services have their checkbook out and they're comparing vendors. It's a damn good keyword to rank for, because it's direct tie to commercial impact, direct tie to revenue. And we can measure this. Like, we get 100 visitors per month that search content marketing services. 1 out of 4 of them will fill out a form, and then 1 out of 2 of those will get allocated out, and then 1 out of 5 of those will turn into actual deals. Right. So you can make this. It's not much of a jump. You can make a connection between this keyword and driving money. You can do that with every single business, no matter how obscure it is that they make their money, or whether it's affiliate marketing, or whether it's just a blog, where they drive ad revenue. You can always make that jump to money, as long as you figure out that very, very basic formula. So good SEO will do that. They will always try to figure out how to get traffic to your site. It's going to spend money with you or create money for you. And then they should also focus on the other side of your site, which would be nurture. And that's like a blog. The whole reason why you create a blog is so you can drive traffic to your site for people that are looking for answers to questions that you can answer. Or like, somebody asks a question, what is content marketing? They're not in a buyer's mood. They just want to learn. However, if I answer that question, they come to my site, I will answer that question for them, and hopefully put them on my newsletter with a pop-up or some sort of form, and then I can nurture them down the road to a point when they might be in the buyer mood, and they might be the person that searches not what is content marketing, but content marketing services, right? So an SEO should think of a website as two sides. One, the commercial side that drives that buyer intent, and then the other side is the blog side, which drives that, what you call informational intent, and then nurture. Really. So if you do those two things, you're a pretty good SEO, and you're doing a good thing for your client.
Let's talk a little bit about that blog side. So let's say I've got a website, put it together. My technical SEO looks good. I've got good product pages and whatnot. And now I'm going to write a blog,
Yeah.
and I sell blue widgets. So I'm going to write a blog on top 10 blue widgets. And I know I've done my keyword research, and blue widgets gets pretty good search volume. So I go and I create an article on top 10 blue widgets. And I'm a WordPress user, so I've got Yoast, or I've got a Rank Math installed to be able to do an SEO analysis of my article. It's coming back as a green light in Yoast, or a score in Rank Math. So everything's looking good. I hit publish. Have I done everything that I need to do for SEO for that article?
No. It's actually a little bit easier than doing that. Those tools aren't going to do anything for you. So I'll just throw that out there. I can send you a link afterwards. I did a study, like a long-term study with like 9 months worth of data points from Brafton content to see if there's any relationship between content performance, keyword performance, and these different factors. One of them was the Yoast green light thing.
Yep.
I was trying to prove if there's any relationship between those two things. And specifically in there, like a big part of that green light is you enter your keyword and it shows you, did you use enough keyword density?
Right.
Did you use the keyword enough? So I measured performance relative to keyword density. There is no relationship between those two things. So doing that keyword density thing and that little green light is most likely not going to do anything for you at all. Same thing with the word count. I used a correlation formula to see if there's any relationship between word length and performance. There's none. There's almost perfectly zero relationship.
Interesting.
Zero correlation. So what you need to do in order to satisfy the SEO gods with your content is to do what you did. You picked a good keyword, you liked it, you found good search volume. But then the trick is to write the content in such a way that you fully satisfy the intent of the searcher, right? So imagine if you search for something, a scenario where you search for something and you land on a page that answers every single one of your questions you could possibly have about that topic. You have no reason to go back into search results and weave together more information through other search results. You've got everything that you possibly need. That's the goal of writing the content. So when you land on that keyword that you want to rank for, it's your job to answer every potential topic somebody would ever want to know about that. Just imagine you're writing a Wikipedia page, right? And there's ways you can do this, more quantitative rather than qualitative ways that you can do this. You don't have to do it by instinct. You can do it manually by, like, you pick that keyword and then you just go through the search results and you see what people are writing about. Make note of all the major topics that they discuss. Like topic A is discussed by 80% of first page results. Topic B is discussed by 20%. And then you've got this weighted priority list of all the potential topics you could possibly talk about from all the results. So with this information, theoretically, you would have an exact blueprint on everything you could possibly talk about and exactly how you should weight it and which areas you should emphasize, right? So really, you're stealing ideas from everybody, and you're going to write something more comprehensive than anybody out there, which would do a better job for the reader, right? Google knows this. Google knows how well you cover a particular topic. So when you write on that topic, if you've got better content that better satisfies the reader, you're going to rank way, way, way better. And we've done this in experiments, started doing this back in 2018. And our page one keyword rankings have gone from, I think it was around 100 to, it's about 400 to 2,500 in 2 years, something like that. Our traffic has more than tripled over that time period just by using this one particular technique. As a matter of fact, it happens almost instantaneously too. So if you take I imagine you take an old piece of content that's doesn't really perform very well. Like you've got a keyword that ranks in position 9 or 10, just gets a few clicks. We will do that. We'll make the piece of content more comprehensive, republish it, and then see what the results look like. And so I did this a few times, and I took where we ranked beforehand. I updated the content, and I resubmitted it to Google. And within 60 seconds, we went from position 3 to 1. Another case, we went from 32 to 4, from 10 to 4. Within a snap of the fingers, you're immediately driving 5x more traffic, and sustainably so. So we know this technique works really, really well. And what I really, really like about it is it's much easier to comprehend than all this technical SEO stuff you're talking about for small business owners. You tell them, here's your keyword. This is how you write really, really good content. Really easy to internalize that.
So when you said that you republished it, do you republish it as a new page, or do you just republish the old page with the additional content? So you keep the
Same
same
page.
URL.
Same page, same exact URL. Rewrite the content and then republish it with the current date is the key.
So to kind of play back what I heard from you is, in my earlier example, I said that I've seen, especially for keywords that I know I go after, is I look at the top couple of rankings, and maybe they're very short little posts, 500-word articles or pages or whatnot. Say those are the top 3. If I would come out with a post, a 2,000-word post that would encompass the ideas of those top 3 and publish that as a page, an article, that is sort of encapsulating what you're talking about. You're taking the best ideas from those shorter or other competitive pages, and you're saying now the reader could get all of that information in one.
That's exactly right. And that's something that, especially if you're competing against somebody with, I'm glad you mentioned domain authority earlier, because if you're, say, your website's a domain authority of 30, and that one that's ranking number 1 is a domain authority of 60, then they're seen already as more reputable than you. So you have to do extra work with your content just to keep up, because you're punching uphill, right? So you may be able to compete with them if you overcompensate with better content. And you would actually have to overcompensate with better content, because they already got a head start. They got a 5-second head start in the sprint. So you need to catch up.
How does this compare to a pillar page strategy? So maybe define for the audience what a pillar page is, and then what you think of that as a strategy in terms of your website design.
So a pillar page it's a core concept. All right. So like, say I want to rank for something broad, like inbound marketing. There's so much that goes into inbound marketing. All right. So this is, you could take 2 different approaches to this. You could write an entire tome about inbound marketing on one particular page, covering all the different facets of it: SEO, email marketing, content writing, the whole kit and caboodle on one page. Or you can make that like a core hub page, which you'd call a pillar page, and have this page cover all of the main ideas, the concepts of inbound marketing, but it links out to other individual pages that support it. So this is the pillar. And then the support for the pillar would be an entire article about email marketing, an entire article about SEO, an entire article about keyword research. Right? So it links to all of these resources that support the main concept of inbound marketing. So what you've done is you created this pillar of strength that are supported by a whole bunch of other very, very strong topics in their own little niche, right? So you've nailed every one of those niches, talking about everything you could possibly talk about, and covering all the main subtopics of that niche. And all of those are linking into a main page that's targeting inbound marketing. So a pillar page is basically just an awesome resource center that supports a broad topic, and it gives you a good chance of ranking for that keyword, probably a better chance of ranking for that keyword, because it shows a very strong topic authority.
It's a lot of work to put one together, but if you do it
Yeah.
right, it can really benefit the business.
It's so yeah. It's if you want to rank from a very broad core term to your business, that's a very, very good way to do it. Definitely.
One of the things that I think is challenging as a business designs their web presence is it
Mm,
seems like there are conflicting priorities. So, number one, you want to have a presence that explains what you do in a way that supports keywords so that it can be found. You don't want to jumble too much together. So, you design your website to break up topics. But
mm,
you've got to have enough text there so that Google understands what it is that you're trying to talk about. At the same time, there's a lot of focus now on video,
mm,
on pictures, on reducing the amount of text because people don't like to read a lot on a web page. And then
mm,
you've also got this issue of mobile friendliness, where now
mhm,
things even have to be condensed further. You don't want to have a lot of heavy graphics. You don't want to have too much text because people aren't going to read that on mobile. And so all of these things together seem to, in some ways, conflict in terms
mhm.
of how you build out your website for SEO. Any thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, it's a struggle that most people, if you do that strategy I just prescribed and writing content to fully cover a topic, inherently that content's going to be longer. It's just going to be longer content. And the main struggle people have is how do you accommodate that on a page in such a way that it's not terrible to look at? Like you mentioned, do people want to read giant walls of text? No, of course they don't. So your content writing and your web development have to be seamless, really. So what we do is if we're going to write a landing page, it's going to be 2,000 words. We have to write the content first and then hand that over to somebody that works in development and graphic design to design that out in a way that flows well so that it's not overwhelming, right? So you have to figure out ways to chunk the text. We read in chunks. We don't read in massive walls of text. We read in small paragraphs. It's just the way our brain works. So you have to figure out a way to break this thing up into small paragraphs, generally supported by some sort of visual to break up the eye. Because the visual gives your eyes a break and your brain a break. And then when you're done with the visual, it keeps you reading into the next section. So generally that's what we try to do. And that's the whole point really of like graphics like you talked about and video. It kind of just gives your brain a different type of media to consume in between reading all the text. So you get a break, you get like textbook, you get work. You get a break, you get a textbook, you get work. And if you have that seamless flow, you can keep somebody engaged throughout the page. So it's not an easy task. You write all this content and how do you get it on the site? Well, you really have to think creatively about how would I want to read all of this content, and that's a problem. A lot of
Yeah.
times we're very self-centered as businesses and business owners. We think people care about our content. They absolutely do not.
Right.
You have to, they don't care about you, and they're not going to be as interested in it as you are. So you have to figure out ways that if you were them, how would you want to consume this content? How could you make it interesting in such a way that other people would want to get through the entirety of it? And a lot of times that involves, natural human behavior. We like to look at pictures. We like to look at video and break it up in such a way that makes it very interesting. And this has a very indirect tie to rankings as well. Like if you keep a visitor on a page for a long time before they go back to search results, that's an indicator. That sends Google a signal that people stayed on there for a long period of time for a good reason. Whereas on the flip side, if you got this page with a giant wall of text that you assume people are going to read, they're absolutely not. They're going to see that wall of text. They're going to panic. They're going to freeze over, and they're going to go right back to search results and find something easier to consume. That's also a signal to Google that that's probably not a good result for them. So I'm glad you mentioned that because that has to work with this program. You can't just write tons of content and dump it in novel format and hope people are going to read it. That's just not going to work.
Yeah, that's so true. I know we're sort of coming up on our time here, but before we wrap this up, I would love just to hear from your perspective. If you were a newer business or a business that really hasn't put much of a focus on SEO with an existing website, what are some pieces of actionable advice that you could give somebody to say, okay, we're starting a program today around SEO. What are some actionable things that we could do here within the next, let's say, couple of months to start to build a process of getting us to rank on Google?
Yeah. Okay. So I always start, we talked earlier about getting your commercial landing pages down. I always start with that. With a brand new website, you're going to want to figure out what are my products and or services. And then through keyword research, you're going to want to figure out what people are searching to get those products or services. A lot of times it's not going to be the same language that you use. You're so in the weeds with your business, you're going to use different terminology probably than your audience is. So you're going to find out, you're going to want to meet your audience where they are, and you're going to want to figure out what they're searching to find your products. And you want them to be, you want to find keywords that people are using where they're definitely going to buy something, which you'd call commercial intent, like we talked about before. So I would start with keyword research. I would find out what those words are. And then once you are solid on what those words are, write out a couple product landing pages using the techniques we talked about before to really, really cover the depth of those services and everything somebody would want to know about those services that you provide. So nail down that part because it has the most commercially relevant impact on your site. So keyword research, content writing, build out those pages. And that's very, very manageable for a small business owner just getting started, because you're looking at, you probably don't have that many products yet. You're likely looking at maybe between, it could just be one, could just be your homepage a lot of times, and that's fine. Or maybe it's a homepage and two solutions pages, could just be 3 pages. So taking that first bite is going to have the most commercially relevant impact. And it's also worth noting that as part of that study that I did, I wanted to see how long it'll take for this stuff to work. So generally, when you create a new piece of content, it takes 100 to 150 days for it to show its potential, right? So the second you get that thing up there, you get those 4 product pages up there, you can start your timer, and you can say, all right, in 100 to 150 days, maybe I can start to see results. So it's up to you and when you start that timer, but obviously you're going to want to start that as soon as possible.
And by results, you mean an initial ranking or, like a top page rank?
Starting to rank. Starting to rank, and then around 150 to 180 days, like that's when you'll see a piece of content generally max out. Like that's probably where you're going to see your true ranking potential is like around half a year or so. So if you see in about half a year, you're in position 9, it's probably where you're going to be. And maybe you need to do some work to get that page up there. You maybe need to do better content writing, or you need to assess the competition a little bit better. Maybe you are punching too high above your weight class and you can't compete. You need to find a different keyword. For starters, some keyword research on your products and services. I published a piece of content on how to do keyword research, just came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's pretty comprehensive. Anybody that's doing keyword research for the first time can probably follow it pretty easy. It'll show you how to do it, and there's a couple templates in there on where to put your content or where to put your data for your keywords and how to choose the right types of keywords. Should be fairly easy to follow. And then write the content and get it live. So that's the main thing. It's just focus on just a couple pages and really, really nail that down and get them up and live. And then the second part of that is start to build out a blog, right? Using the same techniques with keyword research, build out your blog and start collecting emails. The entire purpose of a blog is really to collect emails, which is kind of like a weird thing that nobody even thinks about. It's like, yeah, somebody, why do they have a blog? And they'd be like, well, because you need to have a blog, or because I want to drive traffic. None of those things really do anything for you, though, do they? Like, you have to spend a lot of time writing a blog. What good is traffic that's just not going to buy anything, right? None of that traffic that comes in on your blog ever buys anything. They bounce at a high rate. So that second part would be start a blog and understand why a blog exists. Blog exists to nurture people. So you're probably going to want to incorporate that with some sort of very basic email program, right? Collect collect an email address. You use a pop-up, your conversions will go up 500% as opposed to not using a pop-up. Use a pop-up and just start emailing a once a week newsletter. It could be as simple as, here's the most recent article that I wrote this week. Send it out to your audience and keep them nurtured. It's the whole reason why you create a blog. So if we're to tier these things, tier 1, get your products and service pages nailed down, write really good content, get it live as soon as possible. Part 2, get a blog going and start nurturing people through a newsletter to the point where they're actually ready to hopefully buy something from you at some point in the future. And then all the other stuff is nuance. The technical SEO, all the other stuff, that's just nuance. Unless you break something, you'd probably be okay on your own.
And the blog content should be tangentially related to your primary business?
Yeah, it should be questions that people are asking related to your business. So, we're in content marketing. People will be asking, how do I do a newsletter? How do I write content that's going to rank? That's all like dead central to our authority, what we do. So we're going to write that content and we're going to answer those questions. Those people aren't buying, like I said, anybody searching that, they're not buying anything, but they might subscribe to our newsletter. So topics that are related to what you do and finding out questions that your potential audience are asking. And you can get that through keyword research. You can also get that just by asking people, like ask your friend, all right, if you're searching for a blah, 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 what kind of things would you ask? Right? Because it's really about your audience, not about you. And you'll get really, really good ideas about blogs that you could potentially write that'll, satisfy your searchers, your audience.
Jeff, this is fascinating stuff. We could talk for hours on it. I think it's so interesting. I think it's so nuanced, but I think those tips that you gave, especially at the end there, are really helpful for businesses that are just starting to put some focus on SEO and want to know what to do next. How can people find you and the article that you mentioned on doing keyword research?
Sure. You can I've got a profile on Moz, that's moz.com. They have a blog where SEOs in the industry contribute original research. And one of those pieces I did was analyzing 7 ranking factors. I can send you the link to it afterwards. Helpful to get you a level set on what actually matters in SEO, that particular article. So I've got 6 articles published there. You can also find me on Brafton, Brafton.com. I'm the CMO there, and we do content marketing services. And we also run a podcast called Above the Fold. It's unstructured chaos, where we just talk about all things marketing related, sometimes not marketing related, but we have a lot of fun on there. So you can find me at any of those 3 locations.
That's great. And I'll make sure to have all of that in the show notes so that people can find it. Jeff, I really appreciate your time today. This has been very helpful. It's a great interview. I think it's a lot of great content for the audience. So thanks for taking a few minutes out to talk today.
Hey, Eric, thanks so much for having me. It's been fun.
Great. Thanks.
Cool.